That's good, right? Is that good, Vita?
It's not really turning it. It was
Okay.
actually better the other way. Yeah.
All right, I'll stay this way. That's fine. So he wrote The Watermelon Seed. That was the first book that he had published. He also did Good Night Owl and The Book Hog. And he has coming out just next week, Baloney and Friends, which is really cool. And we've been doing, maybe I'll switch around for this part, but we've been doing every weekday at 11 a.m. We've been having like a little Instagram live show. So Greg will highlight a book that he really likes, like that was written by someone else, and then he'll do a reading of one of his books, and then we do a little art project that's related to the story. So that's on his Instagram live every weekday, and that's been really fun. And actually a bunch of my Jackson kids have participated in that, which has been great to see. So I was teaching when the pandemic hit. I was actually supposed to be teaching 4 days a week at Fleisher, and sadly enough, here's my Fleisher Jackson book right there that has all of my lesson plans in it, but sadly I haven't been able to see them, so I really miss them. But I've been able to see them on the internet, so that's nice. Over here, I have some of my books, and then this is actually a picture of my mom. She is in Ireland in this photo, and she's knitting something. And my mom is also an artist. She taught me pretty much everything I know. I don't think I have any of her art here, but I have a lot of it in my house. And she actually taught me how to do the process of trapunto quilting. So let's see if I can probably take you to this one over here. This is a little outlet here. It's a good example. But she taught me how to do trapunto quilting because she went to the Art Institute of Chicago. And while she was studying painting there, she also started experimenting with soft sculpture. So she showed me how to do this process where you sew it like a pillow, and then you sew from the front to the back. And then you actually, I don't know if you can see, but it's actually ripped open. It's kind of like white thread there, but you rip it open and you stuff it from the back. And that's why it looks kind of flat, but kind of like a pillow. So it's not quite as poofy as if it were just, the rectangle. And that's called trapunto quilting. And so she taught me how to do that. So I have her photograph on my little bookshelf. This is a book. This is by Myra Coleman, or the illustrations are by her. I'm obsessed with her. I love her work. And I had all of my books ready for her to sign because she was coming to the Free Library and it was canceled. So hopefully next time. And then maybe I'll just show you a bit of my equipment. A lot of my pieces I screen print. So I know some of you are familiar with screen printing. Some of you maybe aren't. So I brought out a screen here. And this is actually the final piece up here. So this is Meg's charcuterie board, and I'll talk a little bit about this project in a minute. But I just wanted you to be able to see the final piece. And then I don't know if you can see so well, but the image is actually on this screen right here. What I do is first I hand draw the image, and then I coat it with this emulsion, which is light sensitive. And then I expose it to light in my exposure room, which we'll go over to in a minute. And everywhere where I've drawn on the white of the paper will come out and will actually be clear, so that there won't be any emulsion right there. I don't know if you can see that. Like it creates this stencil. So ink is able to go through there, and when you use a squeegee.
Hey, Kay. Quick thing. I think sometimes you're covering your mic and we can hear you a little bit less.
Oh,
there you go.
Where is the mic? Do you know?
Not sure.
I thought it was, okay. All right. Well, just wave your hands, because I'm only looking at you, Vita. You're all I see. So just wave if you can't hear me.
Okay.
All right. So you take some ink, you put it up here, and then you would push that through, and then you would get this image, your original drawing, onto paper. Usually people use paper. I use fabric. So in this case, what I did was I printed like a light brown color, and then I painted the rest because I wanted to get really realistic looking fig jam. And that's a little bit harder to do with screen printing. I wanted to get lots of colors. This was a really fun one too, because I work from life a lot. I like to draw from images. So I was like, well, I guess I have to make a charcuterie board. So I went to Whole Foods and I got a bunch of fancy stuff, and I made a charcuterie board so I could, a vegetarian one, so I could do it from the right angle, because unfortunately when you look online for images, they're just usually not what you want. So they're always from above, at least for charcuterie boards. And I always do things from a certain perspective, usually from the side. So almost like a Wes Anderson style. So that's why I had to recreate that charcuterie board and bring it over actually to Emily's house, and we ate it and it was delicious. So that's how it's kind of done, is I draw it, then I screen print it, and then I go over there and I sew it. Sometimes I'm painting in between. And the way that you expose screens, it's a little complicated. This is my exposure unit room, which is pretty brand new. I had my friend from the Carpenter Street Studios, Terry, he actually built this table for me so it could fit my screens perfectly, and also this exposure unit. And it opens up like this. Comes up, and inside are UV light bulbs that will expose. So it's like a very concentrated amount of UV light. This beautiful neoprene up here is attached to a vacuum that's in the back. And so it gives you a really nice, good seal. So any screen printers, they know what this is. And I wanted one for a long time, and finally got one. So
Hey,
I
Kay.
saw that question, and I will talk about that. Yeah, so this wallpaper I actually designed. This was a screen print that I made, but I had this printed digitally onto Tyvek, and I wheat pasted it onto the wall before we installed the table and the exposure unit. So that's a design. And actually this Tyvek was in my exhibition that I had at Fleisher. I was a Fleisher Wind Challenge artist. And the great thing about printing on Tyvek and wheat pasting it is that you can usually reuse it. And so I never had a purpose for it for a long time. And I was like, you know what, this would be perfect. So that's how I was able to get this fern wallpaper in the background. And also this design comes from Coming Home, the piece that I think we'll talk about when we do photos. Right, Vita? Like when we go through.
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. All right, here's just a plant piece. My work is good for tight spaces. So this is a plant that's over here. And then I only show the bathroom because I converted the tub that was here. We obviously we shower at home for the most part. Although when we had a plumbing issue, and it was very convenient to have an extra shower. But this is where we wash out our screens. So you can take that emulsion off and rinse out your inks. And luckily it's a ceramic tub, so I can use like a magic eraser to get all that ink off. And then we have this really powerful light that allows you to see any gunk that's in your screen. So that is our setup. This is all storage here. So I store a lot of my artwork. I wrap it in plastic and have it stored in here for the smaller pieces. Actually, the smallest ones are up there. They're in boxes. And then the medium ones are down there. And then those large ones were on that big shelf that I showed you before. And this is not super neat, but I'll show it anyway. This is where I store my inks. And we have a little mini fridge for the emulsion. So, you know, it's a lot of figuring out when you convert a house into a workspace. And then we also repurpose our flat files. Greg actually built this. So we have this board, and then our clamps are into the board so we can actually print on top of our flat files because they're so huge and you have to use that space. And then this is somewhat dirty but very loved light table that I used for making my positives and transferring drawings. So I think that's the overview of the equipment. So here, I think I wanted to talk about, we'll start with the piece that you can see in Vita's background. It's actually, two of them are here, but maybe you saw the picture that was in her background as well. And these are pieces that were originally for the airport, the Philadelphia airport. And basically I recreated their plants that they have. I thought it was really interesting that they had, there's a, sort of a gallery shot. But they had these really beautiful plants in this very institutional space. And so I recreated those life-sized, and they were part of like an artist takeover of Terminal A that was there. So yeah, they were fun. And now I have them back, and two of them are in my house, and then two of them are here. And then if we could go back to me, Vita.
Oh, okay. I'm still learning this too.
No, it's fine. There we go. I have a bunch of pieces up that were part of an exhibition I did last year. Vita actually came to the opening, so I was describing them to her yesterday and realized, oh wait, you were there. So there's this really wonderful nonprofit in Brewery Town called the Monkey and the Elephant, and they hire people that were formerly in foster care and have aged out of the system. And it's really difficult. I think it's a very challenging time for people because if you're 18 and you don't have other resources, trying to have housing stability and work stability and going to school it's a lot of hurdles for a young person. So this place hires former foster care youth and supports them. And so they asked me to do a project in their space. So I interviewed a number of the people that worked there and asked them to describe a meal that was significant to them. So I'll come in a little closer. This is the old Wendy's that I think is on Walnut Street. They're renovating it now, but I was able to get some pictures before. So it's very like vintage looking. But this is DJ. He described a meal that he was able to get. It was a 4 for $4, so there's some screen printed chicken nuggets, a soda, a hamburger, and some french fries. And he described a very tough night where he had been living with his friend, I think on his friend's couch, and they got into an argument and he had nowhere to go. He was kicked out. And so he called his support worker, and his name was Damien, and Damien came out. It was 10 o'clock at night, and he got DJ and he said, have you eaten? And he brought him to Wendy's, and DJ just said it was so touching for him because he said that he hadn't eaten that day, and he could tell that Damien was like using his own money, and he was just really moved. It was a very moving story about how like a $4 meal just like meant a lot to him. So that's DJ's 4 for $4. Meg is actually the supervisor, or she's the social worker who works there. And so it's really great. They have a social worker on staff. She checks in with them every day, if somebody's late or not showing up. instead of like firing them like the way Starbucks might do or something, she works with them and says, you know, what's going on and how can we support you? And so this is her charcuterie board. And she described living in Red Hook, Brooklyn, and she would like to have the people she worked with over, and she would always make them charcuterie. So I don't exactly remember. I think it was, she worked mostly with teens, like at-risk youth. And so it was sort of like this fancy thing that she would do with them. And then this piece from that series is Lisa's cake. So it was her vegan, gluten-free wedding cake with blueberries, because she actually has a number of food allergies, and she was about to get married and she was determined to have a cake, even though she couldn't have like dairy or gluten or any other fruit besides blueberries. So this is her sort of persevering over all of those limitations that she had. And then the last piece I have in my studio right now is Ruby's mom would make her sandwiches. That's what it's called. Ruby's mom made her egg sandwiches. So here's Ruby's egg sandwich. And she describes that her mom actually was in an accident, and she was very young. She was, the accident happened, but then her mom was sort of had like one of those helmet things to keep her safe for a while, but something happened and she ended up passing away when Ruby was 10. And Ruby was really upset that she wasn't, her family kind of came in and took over, her aunts and uncles and grandmother and stuff, and she wasn't actually there when they pulled the plug. Like, she just thought her mom went to the hospital. She didn't know what happened. So that's the significance of the plug. And then the butterfly up here, her mom had a lot of, like, she loved butterflies. She had a tattoo of a butterfly. But she said that her most significant meal was that her mom would make her egg sandwiches, and they were delicious. So I recreated them. And then this floor here is actually based off of photos she sent me of the house that they lived in. So that was a project I did there. Over here, I was lucky enough to do a really fun residency in Sweden. And this was the sewing machine that they gave me. Well, it's not, it's a drawing and pillow version of a sewing machine. And it was really difficult for me to learn how to use this like vintage Elna. It was beautiful, but I just, even the YouTube videos were, you know, for more recent models. And I just felt like once I finally conquered using that sewing machine, it was a victory in of sort of like adapting to a new place. So I recreated that Elna. I've also been working on a lot of sign pieces. So I've been, sometimes I just see signs and they really interest me, and like how much they dictate what we do and what control people have over you sometimes. And so actually this one is kind of interesting. I did another residency in, I don't think I can hold my hand up here for too long, but that's why I'm like, I'm sort of shaking and stuff, because it's like, it's actually a workout to do this. Stretching to show people stuff. So anyway, so this is a sign that I think is really misleading. Actually, the New York Police Department, when I posted this on Instagram, they responded a little in a sassy way. But Greg and I, we were living in New York for this residency I was doing at Cooper Union. And we had brought our car up because we brought my dog and our 2 cats all the way up to live in New York City. And I'm gonna sit down while I tell you this story. You can look at me because my arms hurt. I'm gonna be sore tomorrow. Yeah, so we were having to move our car every day because there's just like the parking there. You think parking in Philly is bad? You should try the Lower East Side of Manhattan. And so we would find parking, you know, really read the signs. And then this one, I guess I do have to show you how ridiculous this is. But it says no standing Friday through Sunday, midnight to 6 a.m. So that's Thursday night, which we didn't realize. We thought, oh, we're good until Friday at 11, because that top one says Friday at 11. We thought, oh, the weekend, you just can't park there. So no, it turns out Thursday night we got towed. Not only did we get towed, they broke our back window when they towed our car. So apparently we're gonna get refunded for that. So we'll find out. So yeah,
well, that's good.
Yeah.
There's something, Kay, there's something kind of subversive about those signs, because like in pillow form, they're a little bit comic and funny, you know, whereas in real form, they're very like strict and directive. What do you think about that?
I love that idea because honestly, I'm not sure why. Some of my pieces, like I feel like this project with the monkey and the elephant, I was really clear about like, meals, and this is significant. And sometimes I make things and I don't really know why I'm making them. So yeah, I think even these like plant pieces, I was like, why am I making those for the airport? Like, it's kind of funny to recreate those plants, but I think you kind of work it out as you're making them. I was thinking about those that contained life, and that like sort of inviting plants in a very limited way, inviting life into a space, but then really controlling it because it's actually this very corporate sterile environment, or they're trying for sterile. So yeah, I think there is, when you convert stuff into a stuffed form, they become kind of silly. There's something like sillier about them than and I think I would pass this on my way home from the studio all the time, and I was thinking like how I feel this a lot, that you're not really supposed to stop at any time in your life. So
Yeah. Kay, Ben is asking, are the plants and others hand painted like you showed at the beginning, or are they screen printed?
These are hand painted. I have screen printed that big before, but because of the colors, again, I decided when I was teaching printmaking to college students, I would ask them all the time, why are you making a print? Because it is so much harder to make a print than it is to make one of something. So you really have to have a good reason for it to be a print. And that can be because you want to transform it, or you're going to wheat paste it everywhere, or you want to distribute it, you want it to go to lots of different people. But for these, I only needed one, and you want them to be unique. If you had, 20 of these plants, it would look, that would be a different piece. It would look interesting, but plants aren't supposed to look the same. So yeah, I chose to paint these instead. And so I kind of do whichever makes sense for me. I was trained as a printmaker, so I'm reluctant to say I'm a painter. And I think I really paint like a printmaker, very flat. Just a little bit of shadow in there, but I think a painting teacher would say not too much. So, and especially, with these pieces, because they're graphic and they're signs, they really translate well into sort of painting like a printmaker.
Cool. Kate, do you want to talk about some of the other pieces that we have on the slideshow?
Sure. I think we're going to probably start with Coming Home. So really quickly, just to give you a sense of scale, this piece you will see in Coming Home. And then, yeah, we can talk about those. Okay. Wait, no, I was wrong. That's not in Coming Home. That's in Lost and Found. Oh, well. All right. So I'm guessing everyone's seeing the Coming Home piece right now, right, Vita?
Yep, they should be.
Okay, great. So
are you seeing it?
Mm-hmm, yeah.
Okay, great.
So this was done a while ago now. It's amazing how time changes. But this was done in 2012. And what we're looking at is a 39-foot wide piece. On the left is a kitchen. that's all sewn and stuffed. Then there's the bathroom, and then a dining room, and then sort of like a living room space. And
Here's the close-ups.
yeah, here's good. This is good. So yeah, maybe I'll talk a little bit about the kitchen first. So each of the panels is a representation of 4 different people's memories of their childhood homes. So in this one, for example, I interviewed 4 people from Philadelphia. So Kim is from Southwest Philly, Leroy is from Eastwick, Peggy was from the Northeast, and Frank is from South Philly, and actually used to work at Fleisher. Did you know Frank, Vita? I think he was before your time.
I think I do know. Barbella?
That's the one. So I interviewed him about his childhood
Great.
home too.
Mm-hmm.
That is Frank's ceiling fan. If you look up at that ceiling fan. And then also that percolator is Frank's. His parents would make coffee using, it's kind of like an old school Italian percolator, but he said it made the worst coffee. I see him at Gleaners all the time, so he's probably used to that Gleaners coffee, which is delicious and I miss very much. So those are his pieces. And then Leroy, he's actually a really fabulous artist, Leroy Johnson from Eastwick, and he told me stories about his house, and he had this old refrigerator. So that refrigerator with the General Electric logo on it, he described how the freezer was on the bottom, and he was really into animals, but also like if he found dead animals, he would taxidermy them, which is kind of creepy, but he is an animal lover. He didn't like kill animals. He found them. So one morning he said he found a bat. He was probably 7 or 8 years old. And he said, oh, I really want to taxidermy this, but I have to go to school. So he wrapped it in some wax paper and put it into the freezer. And when he came home, his mom and his dad were waiting for him. And they had a big, long discussion with him about not putting dead animals into their refrigerator. So he got in trouble for that. And then Kim, she talked about that stool that's on the left there and how her grandmother would sit on that stool. And she, you kind of can't see so well here, but there's like a yellow telephone that's above it. And she would hold the telephone and have her telephone hour, and you were not to interrupt her. And then she would play that radio that's on top of the refrigerator, and she would put the Gospels on. And then Peggy, that was her daisy wallpaper in the background. Actually, yeah, that was hers. And then the window as well, it has like sort of a zigzag pattern, and her name is Peggy Malkin. And she always thought that it was little M's for her last name, because when you're a kid, you think like, oh yeah, that must be because of my last name. And then also that gold clock, that was hers as well. And her parents, you remember, she was 5, and she was up really late with her family, and she was like, it's 2 a.m. And they were very impressed that she could read the time. And then they realized that it was way too late for a 5-year-old to be up. So basically each of the panels, you could show maybe have like all 4 people mixed together. And so I kind of recreated their stories of their spaces in each of those.
Hey, storytelling seems to be such a huge part of your work, not just in this piece, but specifically in this piece. Can you tell me how storytelling and the actual physical objects connect, how the stories inspire you, what their relationship is?
Yeah, so these pieces, I was interested in the idea of that we carry all of these memories with us, but that there's no physical representation of them anymore. So I'm trying to almost like illustrate these lost physical objects for people. And I'm also really interested in how we share a lot of commonalities, like so that people that grew up at different times, different neighborhoods, that we have this nostalgia for the past. And so I wanted to connect these kind of different people into one collective narrative and this idea of home. I am very motivated by other people. Like I don't make too much art. I mean, I guess the signs a little bit, but most of my art either has a narrative or a story, because that's, I think, what leads me to be interested in actually creating it.
And this piece, the convention center purchased, and
Yes, when they
it's
did that one,
displayed there.
it's in Hall G. So if you're on the PAFA side of the convention center, if you enter from the PAFA side near Broad Street, it's right there. And it felt like the universe just opened up and gave me a gift, because there aren't many places that can display like an almost 40-foot by 9-foot piece. So, but the convention center is one of them. And because this was about people from Philadelphia too, I was really, really happy when they decided to buy it and have it on display. So it's there.
Yeah, that seems like a perfect place. I'm really glad it found a home. That's pretty terrific.
Me too. Yep,
Um,
there it is. That's so they did have to, even the convention center wasn't big enough. They had to split it into two. So there's that on one side, and then on the opposite side is
okay.
the bathroom and the kitchen.
Cool.
And she insisted on it being really high because I guess people touch the work all the time.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Did you want to just, I don't know if we're good on time. I think we have a little time if we can talk about this piece too.
Yeah, okay. And so this was the one, actually Vita took this photograph way back when. She got up on like what was it? Like a lift and took a bunch of photos for me. And this is Lost and Found. It was at the Free Library of Philadelphia, the central branch over in the Homepage Cafe. Yeah. And so for scale, you can see like there's the little computers and the coffee containers and stuff, and so everything's life-sized. And I interviewed and got submissions from over 40 people to make, I think it was over 90 objects that were all things people had lost that they wish they still had. So I think before I'd shown you, maybe Vita, you could circle around in the second building on the top. There's that guitar.
Oh, circle it.
Yeah,
oh, yeah.
There it is. Yeah. So that's the guitar. Actually, I have that vase over by my window too. And that's Sam's guitar. She was my intern when I made Coming Home. She actually helped me print the fern pattern. And so I still am very good friends with her. And she described her dreams of becoming a guitar player and how she bought this really great guitar. And then her mom, when she went to college, her mom sold it in a garage sale. So a lot of the stories were, oh, and then my mom got rid of this or whatever.
Oh, no.
But some of them weren't. So I actually started by interviewing the people that worked at the cafe, which were formerly homeless people who were living various places, but similar to the monkey and the elephant, they would hire formerly homeless people to give them job training and skills in a more supportive environment. And so I started with interviewing the 4 workers that were there, and I recreated their objects. And actually, the manager of that space is now the manager at Monkey and the Elephant. And he's why he reached out to me to see if I would do a project there. So it's interesting how things build over time, and you can never really predict that. But yeah, so I don't know if there are other specific pieces that I could maybe talk about.
I think there was an audio piece that was pretty significant that came along with this work. Can you talk about that? Because I feel like that really brought the story element of all the pieces a little bit to life.
Yeah, so I was really lucky in that Peter Crimmins did an interview for Art Blog with me, and he said, it'd be great to do audio with these so that you could actually have viewers be able to hear those stories. You could hear Sam talk about her guitar, or Julia Zager, that's her couch on the bottom in the second building. So you could actually hear them say, what the stories were, which I loved that idea. But I knew my limits, and creating this piece was my limit. So he actually spearheaded interviewing 16 of the people and having them describe their objects. And then you could go to the website and listen to them talk about their table or their bunk bed or their guitar. So that really added to it. And now I actually was able to, with a grant, get audio equipment. So when I went to Sweden, I also did some interview projects that I was able to edit. So I've been tinkering around with that, but it's hard. Editing audio is really difficult. So I'm getting to it. And then on the left there, you can see there was a board. This is the art educator in me, where you could submit your story. I like things to be interactive. So the idea was that maybe you would see this and think about something that you lost that you wish you still had. And then there was paper and like pens, and you could pin up your own story of something that you were thinking of.
Wow. Did you get a lot of submissions?
I did. And I should have mentioned this too before. So I had 40 people, but a lot of them I didn't know. I put submission boxes up at various exhibitions I would have. I had one at Fleisher when I had my Wind Challenge exhibition. I had a box here, and I had people just, submit anything because I wanted to open it up. That first project, Coming Home, was great, but it was just 4 people. And I thought it'd be nice to open this up to even more people. So I did get a bunch of submissions. It was great. And it was nice too to just be able to get some feedback, because sometimes you put your work out there and you don't know what's happening with it. You have no idea the life that it's living or if it's affecting people. So it's like really nice to have that as an artist, to just see like, oh wow, people are responding to this. That's great.
That's great. I'm going to switch over views just so that we can see if folks have questions. There's probably a bunch that I haven't been able to see, so I'm going to try to get to those.
All right. I will stop being so comfortable on my couch.
Rebecca O'Leary wants to know, I totally recognize those plans from the airport. How long were they up for, and did the artwork sustain any damage, assuming they weren't protected by plexi?
They were not protected by plexi. And so sadly, both Leah and I, the curator there, wanted them flush to the floor. But because they have these like waxing machines that go and clean the floor, that was not recommended. They would have, 5 inches of wax on the bottom of them. And I really fell in love with them. So I was like, no, okay, so we'll just have them sort of, in that photo behind Vita, you could see that they're floating a little bit higher than I would like, but nobody seemed to notice except for V and Leah, so that's great. And I think it was up for about a year and a half or so, and I think some of the pieces are still there. So in Terminal A, I think some of the, I haven't flown in a while, and I'm pretty sure that they were still there the last time I took a flight.
Cool. Lauren wants to know, how long did it take you in Coming Home to make each panel?
Each panel, that would be harder for me to, I made them all at the same time. So it was a 2-year project. Leah came in, it was actually my new studio over at Carpenter Street. She came in and for a studio visit. And I think, 2 years later, it was up. So I know that timeline. I was also working full time at the time. So it was like, maybe I could have done it faster than that, but probably not. It was a pretty tough turnaround because it's first interviewing the people, and then drawing the objects, and then screen printing them, and then sewing and stuffing them. It's a little time consuming. So
labor intensive.
2 years, and at Lost and Found took about the same amount of time.
Are they similar scale? They're a little bit, Lost and Found is much bigger, isn't it?
It is, but the background panels I did digitally. So I drew, and then I scanned the drawings in, and then I had that printed on Tyvek. So the background buildings weren't fabric, because I didn't have the budget for that, although that would be amazing. And then I should mention too, my Juki is really great, but I didn't actually have that one for either of those projects. I just had a little Singer sewing machine that my mom bought me from Walmart. And during post-open studio tours, I met a woman who was a quilter, and she said, you know, for these big background panels, I didn't know how I was going to sew them. And so she recommended a woman who has a long arm sewing machine, which is this amazing 6-foot sewing machine. I mean, it fills a room and it can do up to 12 feet. And it sort of like moves around. You move it with this like steering wheel type thing. And so I actually got her to do those background panels because it would have been totally impossible for me to sew that part. So I screen printed them and then did the edging, and then she did the actual like just piecing, sewing them together. So the quilting part for the background, and then I sewed each of the objects onto the quilted background.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Sounds like a tremendous amount of work. I love it. Lay is asking, is there a line you draw between creating a realistic portrayal of an object and keeping the intrinsic texture of the fabric?
I think I really, really try to make things look the way that I see them, but once you do it in fabric, it's going to get distorted. And I think that's what makes it look more interesting than if it were just a flat painting of it. So I haven't really given too much thought to the like texture of the fabric because I think the fabric wins anyway. Like there's nothing I can do to beat the fabric texture. So yeah, so no, I mostly just really try to replicate it as best I can and then let the sewing do whatever it's going to do. And I sort of give up control at a certain point, that it's going to look a little funky or wobbly or poofy, and embrace that instead of fighting it. Although sometimes I do fight it. Sometimes I'm like, no, I don't want this like bulge here. And it takes my husband or an intern to be like, that looks fine, it's okay. Or for me to just sort of step back and not always be a perfectionist with things.
Cool. This is a comment from Fran, who's also a faculty member at Fleischer. She says, so wonderful to see your work and get to meet, quote unquote, another faculty member. This visit is rejuvenating. I love your work.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, I was thinking today, I was like, I do some writing. Vita and I do morning pages most of the time. And I was thinking how so much of my work is depends on other people and depends on having an exhibition where it's going to be shown to people or having an interview where I'm going to make something that's about someone else's story, and how I feel like really with this pandemic sort of closed off from all of that energy and how much I miss it. I just really miss that part of being able to experience other people's art. And so I'm excited to see some of the future studio visits and stuff that Fleischer's doing.
Yeah, I hope it's bringing a little bit of relief to that. I really do.
Yeah.
Bill was wondering who funded the library piece.
So that was the Independence Foundation for the Arts, because yes, that definitely needed funding. And I was lucky enough, so the Free Library, a nonprofit, has to apply with you for that. So the Free Library applied with me for that. And then, but I found out about it through SIVA. So I was a SIVA fellow, the Center for Emerging Visual Artists. And I had a meeting. I knew I wanted to do this project. I knew I couldn't afford to do it. So I set up a meeting with Genevieve, who's great. She's over there at SIVA. And she was the one who said, this is perfect for this fellowship I had never heard of before. So I'm really thankful for that as a resource in Philly.
Cool. Phoebe says, or asks, when you did your residency at Sweden, did you screen print there?
Yes, and oh my God, their facilities were amazing. So they have these places, and Sweden is like a fantasy land where they just have like money for everything, it seems. So they
or I guess they have a lot of public funds. So people live sort of in smaller apartments, but there's more, it seems like there are more public services that everyone can enjoy. Like there's just free saunas and free like beautiful pools and parks, and there'll be these like bike stations that where you can like clean your bike and like pump up your bike. I don't know, they have tools and stuff. But they also have really great funding for the arts, and they had these places called KKV. I don't remember what that's Swedish for. That was the synonym. But no, it's not a synonym, whatever it
Acronym.
is. Abbreviation, acronym? Yeah.
Yeah.
So KKV, and they are print or they're art studios of different kinds. They have ceramic facilities, they have sculpture stuff like woodworking, but this was a KKV for printmaking, and it was just immaculate. A huge space with really great light and several screen printing stations, and they had a limited letterpress station, and then they had some litho, but yeah, they had really beautiful screen printing facilities. They had this thing that I would love to have, which is a screen dryer, where you can coat your screen and you put it in the screen dryer. It dries in 5 minutes. Since you could, I thought like, okay, well, I just finished my drawing. I guess I'll coat my screens and maybe come back tomorrow and expose. And I ended up finishing the whole edition in one day. So it was great. So yeah, I had a wonderful time there. And that residency is through the Women's Studio Workshop. So they have a partnership with this place in Malmö, Sweden, and I highly recommend it. So Women's Studio Workshop is in upstate New York, and I like their applications because they're always free, and they have some really cool opportunities.
Cool. I'm jealous of Sweden all the time.
Yeah, yeah, me too. I was like, it was a very big adjustment coming back to the United States. I was like, it's so dirty here.
Marie says, I always love sharing your work with my young students. They find it very easy to relate to your ideas, the everyday objects, and the familiarity of stuffed objects. How do you choose people to interview?
So sometimes they come to me, like the monkey and the elephant. The manager asked me if I'd be interested, and usually I try to get people, like I'll kind of put a call out, and I try to get people to come to me because I don't want to push people into, there's a fine line when you make work about other people's lives where you don't want to push them into revealing something they don't want to reveal, or like I'm not trying to exploit anyone. So I really want to make sure that it's something that they want to share. So I usually put a call out. So I made those submission boxes for Lost and Found, or I'll ask around, through social media. But usually, sort of the opportunity arises. And I like to also make the pieces with a certain space in mind. So it's, if there's an exhibition at the library, I planned it for that space, or at the airport, it was for that space. And so I work very much from the angle of the exhibition first.
Marla wants to know, if people wanted to purchase your work, how would they contact you, or where could they do that?
Oh, thank you, Marla. What a great segue. I'm sure you can Google me, Kay Healy, and I think my website will come up. I do have a very limited store on my website, but then also my email is on there as well. It's Kays for my middle name, which is Siobhan, Healy, Healy, because I'm Irish, you can tell, at gmail.com. And I couldn't get Kay Healy because I guess she's some ice skater, but I'm kshealy at gmail.com. And so you could contact me. I also have some pieces through Paradigm Gallery that are for sale as well. Oh, and look, Vita just shared that with everyone, so thank you.
Yes. All right. So we're at 7:30. This has been so fascinating, and everybody stuck around the whole time, which is great to see. This has been great. Thank you so much, Kay.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks
And
for
I
your
got a
time.
bonus arm workout at the same time.
Yeah, I know. You're going to have the muscles now. That's awesome. Thank you everyone so much for joining us tonight again. It's so lovely to see so many familiar faces here tonight. If you are interested in donating or renewing your membership with Fleisher, there are links in the chat box you can use. Lots of people saying thank you, Kay. So, all right. That's about it. Thanks again, Kay.
All right. Thank you, Vita. I'll
Yeah.
hope to see you in real life soon.
Absolutely. Yeah. Stay safe, everyone, and good night.
All right. Thanks.
Bye, Kay.
Bye.